The pad that I'd like to show you now is a Hallux Valgus pad. It's a cavity pad that's going to cushion or take away any friction, or the majority of friction, and to a larger extent the pressure over a prominent first metatarsophalangeal joint where there's a Hallux Abducto Valgus. Now we're going to use felt, Hapler 7mm semi-compressed felt. So this is quite thick. So obviously when choosing this pad, one has to be conscious of the amount of footwear space that is available. This pad itself will have its distal border around the interphalangeal joint here on the hallux, and its proximal border approximately around the tuberosity of the navicular. So quite a large surface area is going to be covered because pressure equals force over area. So by putting a largish amount of felt here, we're going to provide a large surface area over which force is going to be applied, which hopefully then will reduce pressure to that prominent area here over the first metatarsal phalangeal joint. So the pad shape that we're going to cut is a bit like an egg. So it's an ovoid shape with the narrower part here on the hallux and the wider part here on the medial aspect of the foot. So cutting this out then, let's cut out this ovoid shape first. We're now going to bevel the borders so we get good skin adhesion and it feels comfortable for our patient. So cutting a roughly 45-degree angle around the outside borders of the whole pad. There's our bevel. We could, if we wanted, added a pie crust area here to give a more graded approach. This isn't always necessary, but just to show you how that's done, you press with your finger underneath the pad to elevate a portion of it, press your scissors on the opposite side of the pad and trim. Moving your finger and scissors along, you're able to achieve a pie crusting effect. Okay, so if we just finish off there, and that will give a more graded approach to the bulk of the pad. So that's the outside of the pad, but now we could of course just cut an aperture here, which would be fine, and maybe under bevel it to reduce the pressure on the edge there, and we could sight that over the prominent Hallux Abducto Valgus portion. And obviously then if we covered that with retentive strapping or with another material, say fleecy web, we could achieve some anti-frictional properties to reduce shearing stress to that area. But this is the novel part of this pad, is that on this side, if we turn it over, we're going to reduce or remove a portion of the felt here, but not strike through onto the dorsal surface of the pad here. So it's going to form a cavity, a well, if you like. So to ensure that we get the right place, press that against the pad there, and so we know the apex of that prominence is about there. Push your sharp end of your dressing scissors in, but do not pierce through onto the other side. As soon as you're through, angle the scissor almost parallel with the pad itself and start advancing into the pad and start to trim out. Obviously being careful, so feeling with your finger on the other side to show it doesn't come through. Start to remove a portion of the felt as we cut around like so. So here you can see I haven't come through, but I have removed a portion. Just gently lift that away, discard that. Now this may be too small, but it's our starting point. So if we hold that against there, we can see that we've sighted it correctly. Okay, we might want to advance it a little forward anteriorly. So now that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to enlarge this again, checking that I don't come through on the dorsal surface. So as I advance this this cavity more anteriorly and remove. Obviously, the cavity size depends on the size of the prominence and on the area of epidermis that's being sheared by quite possibly footwear. Okay, so I've removed probably about half the thickness. This is 7mm semi-compressed felt, so I've probably removed around about 3, maybe 4 millimeters worth of felt. This too can be underbeveled to get a very smooth transition and also for comfort for our patient. So just lightly underbeveling that. Now to place it on, remove the paper back. As we can see, there's still a covering on the dorsal surface. Now placing this on the foot, obviously the prominence of the Hallux abductor valgus and any bony lipping, any hypertrophy of bone there, can be covered in that space, and then gently lay it onto the skin. As you can see, we haven't gone too far on the plantar surface here because obviously we don't want a ridge for the person to stand on. Just lay that down against the skin here. The cavity here then covers so that any friction, probably from footwear, is offset by the felt, and there's minimal transference then of that shearing stress onto the skin beneath. Now, what kind of retentive strapping could we put on here? Well, we're going to use Haploband, Cox & Gerard's Haploband, which is an elasticated fabric which has a light longitudinal stretch within, so it allows us to go round concavities and convexities with minimal creasing. And in this instance, I'm going to use 2.5 centimetre width tape. So I'm just going to cut out how much I need here, which will go around, again, the circumference of the pad, meeting at both ends. Curve both distal and proximal ends of the taping so that hosiery doesn't grab the corners and take it off. The first piece then, remove the paper backing and place one end of the pad and gently, putting a slight stretch across it as we go round, adhere it to both pad and skin in 50% proportions, gently covering all the way around to the proximal portion there. And then on the opposite side, we do the same. So overlap the retentive strapping on the first portion and then come round with a very gentle stretch, just curve it round. And there we have a Hallux abductor valgus pad with a cavity to protect any bony prominence and reduce shearing stress and any lesions that have arisen as a result of that friction.